So the Cowboys went out and got Randall Cobb to be a number 2 receiver, and he definitely has his pros and cons. While he's not a game changer, he does have his advantages, so let's just get right into talking about it. And as of right now, it's a cover 1 play, and that's where Randall Cobb is on the screen. It's going to be man coverage, as is the cover 1 linebacker blitz, and take a look at his route. This is an interesting way to try to beat man coverage. I mean, it's similar to an out route, except it's breaking into the top half of the screen, and it is going to get away from the center of the field where safety is, so that part is actually pretty good. If you notice right now, this is a large part of where this play is going to be won. Can he get past his assigned defensive back? And if you notice what he's going to do, is he's pretty much going to do a quick move where he fakes as though he's going to his right, and it's going to break up to the left. This allows him to get past that defensive back and create some separation. Now, one thing that I have to say about Randall Cobb that I have noticed, especially at this point in his career, is he doesn't accelerate too quickly. He is a pretty fast guy, but it will take him some time to get up to that speed. And as we notice right now, that's kind of the reason why, despite him making a great move to get off, now he doesn't have a ton of separation. Basically, it has to be a near perfect throw, and it is close to a perfect throw, but Rodgers throws it a bit too far, and Randall Cobb just isn't able to make the catch. I think that kind of shows very well what Randall Cobb can do. He does have a very good first step, and once he's in open space, he can run pretty fast. However, it does take him a bit of time to get to that speed. This play is another interesting example. If you take a look, it's going to be a cover 1 hole, and what Green Bay is going to do here is send a receiver running that route right there, and in theory, the safety who's in charge of covering that right side of the screen will follow him, and then they can simply send Randall Cobb on that route, and he could get open. This is actually a great way to use Randall Cobb, in my opinion. For one thing, I don't think he's the best number 1 receiver. I think he really should be a number 2 or a slot receiver, but also because this is a play that takes a bit of time to develop, so it gives Randall Cobb time to run and get to his full speed. The play ends up working out, Rodgers is able to hit him, and Cobb makes a ton of separation and is able to make the catch. From that point on, he's able to create a ton of separation, which is really key in that play. So let's just say that's what Randall Cobb is at the age of 28, is a solid receiver who can play from the slot, and he can be a number 2 receiver. Now that just by itself is definitely worth having and worth paying some money for, but what I think makes Cobb a good signing for the Cowboys is the fact that he's not just that, but he's a veteran player. He's a smart guy, and I'll show you what I mean with this play. If you take a look, it is going to be man coverage, and on the bottom half of the screen, those are going to be the 2 routes that the Green Bay Packers are going to be running. The fact that those 2 routes cross each other should help create some separation and kind of confuse the Patriots and give them more room to operate. And now if you take a look, Cobb is pretty open, but one thing worth noting is that the first down marker is 1 yard past him. I think a lot of guys would kind of stay where they're at and just try to make the catch and then try to get the first down. However, Cobb realized that there is a Patriot right behind him, and if he doesn't run up to the ball, there's a very real chance that he won't end up catching the ball at all. It's a 2nd down and 10 right now, so if you don't get the first down, it is going to be a 3rd down situation. But Cobb realizes that 3rd down and 2 is a lot better than a 3rd down and 10, and so he is going to take a couple steps up, make the catch, and he gets tackled before the first down marker, but it creates a much easier 3rd down situation for Green Bay. It's a smart play, and it's a play that wouldn't have worked had he tried to get the first down. He knew what he had to do, and was able to pick up some yards. Now, one way it'll probably better show why he isn't the best at accelerating is a play like this. If you take a look, it's going to be a wide receiver screen. We're going to send a wide receiver right there to block that defensive back on the top half of the screen. And then Randall Cobb is supposed to cut to that direction. They'll pass it to him quickly, and he'll try to pick up some yards and be running around the edge. Now there is a bear who's aware of a potential screen, and he knows which direction Cobb is going. So this is similar to before when it's about the first step, because this isn't about a first step, because the defensive back already knows where Cobb is going. Cobb instead basically has to outrun that safety while running to the top half of the screen, and while having to catch the ball along with doing it. So it's a lot that Cobb has to do, and he isn't able to do it on this play. So he definitely has his flaws, but he also definitely has his advantages. Like on a play like this, for example, it is going to be one-on-one coverage, and that's the bear who's in charge of covering Cobb. Now, Cobb is running a pretty standard out route, so typically this isn't anything too fancy, but why don't you take a look at what actually ends up happening here. As of right now, that bear is actually playing good coverage, and this was the week 1 matchup when Deshaun Kaiser was actually in at quarterback, and so that bear is going to get a little bit excited, and he's going to try to get a pick 6 on this play, essentially, or at least a pick of some sort. But this is where Cobb's veteran presence comes in. And I know the guy's 28, he's not 40, so I keep calling him a veteran, but he has enough experience to really know where the pass is going to be, and he has a lot of patience in that regard. And take a look at this play as the perfect example of how he does that. The bear steps in front of him, but he doesn't panic, and instead leaps up and makes the catch where the bear is now past him. A lot of guys would panic and take another step forward, and then both jump up and the ball would fall incomplete, but Cobb didn't do that there because he knew where the ball was going. This now allows him to get a ton of yards after the catch, and while that play was definitely a good example of it, this next play is a much better example of it. If you notice, it's a cover 2 man, and that's going to be Cobb's route right in the middle of the screen, which is the perfect way to beat a cover 2 man, as there is a cut, and since it's cover 2 man and not a cover 1 hole or a cover 1 robber, this now means that there's going to be no one playing a zone coverage in that middle of the screen, and since it's a great route to beat man coverage, this is seemingly a great situation for Green Bay. But one thing you're going to notice is that Chicago's going to do something very interesting on this play, where they're actually going to switch assignments mid-play. The Bear who's initially in charge of covering Cobb actually realized what's going on and tells the Bear who was initially in charge of covering that bottom right hand corner of the screen to break into the middle of the screen to cover Cobb, and now he's going to break to that right side of the screen. So it was a smart play call by the Packers, but the Bears were able to outsmart them by having that switch of assignment, and now they're in a great situation. One thing you're going to notice though, however, is that the Bear who was in charge of covering that bottom right hand corner of the screen is going to now move over to the middle of the screen to try to cover up that Packer who appears to be open. And also worth noting, Cobb is in a very similar situation to last time, where he's past his assigned man, and the defender is trying to jump in front of him to try to pick off the ball. But again, Cobb doesn't panic. Cobb doesn't run over and try to knock the ball away in fear of a pick. He knows the ball is going to get past that Bear, and so he simply just hangs out and lets the ball get to him. And from that point on, he's off. And again, since he has plenty of time to get to his top speed, he is now able to outrun everybody and gets all the way into the end zone for the go-ahead and eventual game-winning touchdown. He can also be effective in plays like this. If you take a look, it's going to be a cover one hole, and that's his route, and so seemingly just on paper, if you notice, his route should get open way farther up. Although now, you're going to actually see a very similar situation to that last one play out. Once again, there's going to be a switch. The Redskin who's in charge of covering that Packer right there in the middle of the field is now going to play zone and actually move up to the top half of the screen to make sure he continues covering Cobb. And the Redskin who was in charge of just playing zone in that area is now going to be playing one-on-one coverage against that Packer who's in that area. That's going to help them a lot, actually, because while Cobb is open right now, the Redskin is able to sort of get into his area, and by the time he finally does get open, Rodgers decides it's not worth the risk and ends up throwing it away. Cobb did have some separation. Rodgers just decided it wasn't enough, and so that's why he threw the ball away. If this was 4th down, Rodgers probably tries to make that throw, but he decides it just wasn't worth the risk and throws it away, which is, I guess, fair, but I do think it shows that Cobb can still be effective. I know the play didn't work out, largely because of a good switch by Washington, but the fact of the matter is that Cobb did win his one-on-one matchup, and I think that kind of says what kind of a player he is. I mean, he's not Calvin Johnson, where even if he's getting triple teamed, you can still throw it up to him and he'll find a way to make the catch. But if he is in a one-on-one coverage, he can often win his one-on-one matchup. He's not a game changer, but he is someone that can play his role very well, and this play will be a good example of that. If you take a look, it's going to be a cover 3 zone, and what Green Bay is going to do is fake a handoff right at the middle, which in theory will get those linebackers to move in. And that's going to be Cobb's route, and it's very close to a gap in coverage, but because there could be linebackers out of position, this could now mean that he could very much get open. He runs his route very quickly, and the second he is in that gap in coverage, no Redskin is around him, and they're just figuring out that he's going to be stopping right there as he stops right there. It really is true. I don't care what kind of footwork you have, I don't care how fast you are, I don't care how tall you are, you have to be able to run routes if you're going to be successful, and Cobb still is a fantastic route runner. Is he a freak of nature? No, but he can play his role very well, and this play will be another very good example of him doing exactly that. If you see, it is going to be a cover 3 zone, and what they're simply going to do is have Cobb move out to the top half of the screen, and also have another receiver run just underneath him. Really, this is designed to be the cover 3, where the whole goal is to try to get the one safety back to move farther to where Cobb's route is, and then you can have another receiver who's just going to be open underneath him. But since the cover 4, it can still work, there's just a lot less room to work with now. However, what's going to end up happening is this play kind of works in reverse. But if you're going to see what happens, is the Redskin who's in charge of covering that zone right there actually ends up moving forward to guard the Packer who's right there, meaning that there's going to be a wide open gap right behind him. Really, the thought process on this play was that the safety was going to go up to Cobb and you'd have to throw underneath him. However, it kind of works out opposite, where the safety goes down below, and now Cobb is going to be wide open deep. And Cobb's able to run his route well. He realizes the situation, gets into his gap, and the throw is missed, but that's not Cobb's fault. Cobb did his part on that one. I'm not going to sit here and say Randall Cobb is Odell Beckham Jr. or Antonio Brown or whoever, because he's not. I was going to include in this video how he would fit into that Cowboys offense as a whole, but as I was kind of looking into it, I realized that there's so much to talk there that really needs its own standalone video, so I'll probably make that sometime in the future, so look out for that one. But as a whole, I do like the Randall Cobb move for the Cowboys. I don't think it's a game-changing move, but I do think it's a nice piece to add. And the Cowboys did make it to the divisional round last year, so who knows, they definitely could make another run this year. I also just think that he adds some nice X factors as a whole to that Cowboys offense. I mean, this is a guy who definitely has a lot of playoff experience and has a lot of experience in playing in big games. And I know it doesn't mean everything, but I do think that means something. Especially in a physical sport like football, where a lot of it is seeing what you can get away with and seeing what the refs will and won't call. So I do think experience is something that matters in football, while I don't think it matters a ton. And I also see a lot of people talking about how this could be kind of them replacing Cole Beasley in a sense, and well, I don't think that's actually going to be what the case is going to be. I mean, Cobb is a very good player, and I think Beasley is slightly better, but I also just think that they play very different roles. I think Beasley has a lot of quickness and a lot of stuff to the inside, and while Cobb kind of can do that, he's more of a role player than someone who's just going to make things happen on his own, which again is totally fine and totally an okay receiver to have, but I just think that Cole Beasley is just one step above Cobb.
That being said, Cobb could definitely try to look and fill that Beasley role to a degree. Although the one reason I do see that comparison is they are both definitely possession receivers. I mean, Randall Cobb, for as many catches as he gets, he does only average 11.8 yards per catch, which doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. I mean, that just means that that's the type of receiver that he is. While his numbers certainly have been down the past couple of seasons, and he probably will never get back to his 2014 form where he had over 1,200 yards, I think it's also worth mentioning that the entire Green Bay Packers organization as a whole has kind of just fallen apart these past couple of years, so you can't really put all of that blame on Cobb. But either way, I think it's an interesting sighting, and I'll definitely be interested to see in how it works out next year.